Now, in a speech to Parliament this week, Senior Judge Mr Justice Coleridge urged the government to promote marriage as the gold standard and a solution to the epidemic of broken homes in Britain today. He also said that he wanted to draw attention to what he sees as the endless game of pass the partner and condemned the endless and futile quest for a perfect relationship. Now, he reckons many parents were in a complete and uncontrolled free-for-all where being true to oneself and one's needs is the only yardstick for controlling behaviour. So what do we think? Do you think he's talking sense?
I'm afraid I do. I do.
Don't be afraid, if that's what you think.
I know, because, you know, a lot of people would say, well, you know, we've moved on, we don't need all these old-fashioned values. It's not about that. You know, you have to look at this country and you have to think, what has gone wrong? And the one thing that we all know that's happened is the breakdown of the family, and it has happened, and it is happening. And it's not saying that... Of course, you have inevitable breakdown in marriage, you know, where it is completely unsalvageable and, you know, people have to go their separate ways. But I do agree with him because I know people who have done it. They've been in a situation where they've created this, you know, what they think is a perfect life with a husband and a baby and whatever. And then they've suddenly realised, well, you know, maybe I did it too soon, it's the wrong person, I'm moving on. And then they separate and they think nothing of, like, well... Isn't that great? We've got our single lives back and we can have the kid this weekend, that weekend, that sort of thing. That's the sort of thing that I object to. And I do think there's this endless pursuit of selfish happiness. And especially when kids are involved, I'm not saying when it's a difficult situation where it is best that they do split up, but I think a lot of people, I think he's right, I think people do just give up way too easily. And I do think it's too easy to get married and I think it's too easy to get divorced.
Oh, I don't think... I can't agree. No! Well, I absolutely agree with you that, you know, we all need to try harder to stay together, of course, but I think most people do. I don't know, I've got faith in the vast majority of people who do work hard to stay in a marriage. It's not pleasant getting unmarried, let's face it. And I don't know that what he's saying is going to help, because I feel he's stating the obvious in a sense. I do think all couples, when they go into a marriage, go with the expectation and the fervent desire that they're going to make it work. It's going to be a golden marriage. I mean, you don't go into it thinking this is going to fail, I can always get divorced.
Some people do.
Well, not the majority, not the majority. And I think that he's just telling people off, basically. I think it's a very...
I don't think they're going to. I think, but people do get married knowing that they can get out of it as easily as they get into it.
It's an awful, abusive, horrendous marriage. I mean, you don't go back to how it used to be 40, 50 years ago when people had to stay married.
Well, nobody has to, but
they did. They had to. I mean, you know, people stayed together 30, 40 years in desperately unhappy marriages because those days it was shameful to leave your marriage, you know, to fail, as we called it, you know, and failure was the thing that they felt, and that's why they stayed together. That has to go. I mean, that's not something you can hang on to.
It wasn't because of that. It was because of they had different values then. It was like my grandma. It's like, you know, my mum's marriage did break down inevitably. It could never have been retrieved because he left. You know, there's absolutely no coming back from that. So, and it took my mum years to get divorced, and I'm not saying we should go back to that, because there are people who need to have that. You know, they need to be able to get away from someone, they need to be separated from them. But if I know that when I got married the first time, if I had not known at the time that I could have got out of it quite easily, I probably would have thought much harder about getting married. And I'm not saying that I didn't want it to work, because I really tried hard.
From that. You learned from that. I mean, I was the same. My first marriage, I really regret that I didn't try harder in that, and it's made me try much harder with my second marriage.
I didn't give up on it. Don't get me wrong, I didn't give up on it. I really persevered. Again, it was made quite impossible, but at the time, I knew that I could.
But do you think what the judge is talking about are these serial offenders, if you like, who just hop from relationship to relationship?
And also as well, you know, we may well hark back to, you know, the golden days. Oh, my parents were married for 60 years, you know, but they were miserable for 57 of them. You know, what is the solution? I mean, Terry, you were saying you stayed together with Ken probably longer than you should have done.
I was married for 25 years, 17 of which were desperately unhappy. But I stayed because I had a child and I felt it was a duty to stay. And I stayed for all the right reasons. And it was wrong, because if we'd have split when we should have split, Keely and I would have had another life, he would have had another life, we'd have found happiness somewhere else. But I stayed because I thought I tried so hard in that marriage to make that marriage work. I didn't know all the details, I have to say, otherwise I would have gone earlier. But even when I did know some details, I still stayed and tried. And it was so wrong.
Yeah, but we've
and it
talked
was
about
wrong
this
for me
many
and wrong
times,
for Keely.
and there's reasons for that. You know, Keely had grown up a long time before you finally had the courage to get out of it. But you know, it was just, it was simply you didn't have the courage to get out of it at the
But
time.
that's what I'm
it wasn't
saying.
about, you weren't persevering trying to make the marriage work because you knew it wasn't
But
going
that's what
to.
I'm saying. Sometimes people stay because of shame or whatever. I mean, I felt a failure, a total
Everyone
failure.
does. Everyone does.
But I think that's wrong. Because if I'd have had the guts to leave when I should have left, it would have been so much better for everybody else. So this isn't always right. You know, it isn't always right that... Yes, I agree. You know, I went into a marriage that I wanted forever. But it's not always possible.
And I think as well, we're not necessarily giving the next generation the credit that they deserve because, you know, if you think about it, in the 60s, the kids then rebelled against the sort of conservative nature of their parents and sticking together, so it was all free love. I think it could well come full circle. So the next generation could well be the ones that make it work.
Yeah.
We kind of messed up. Hopefully they'll pick up the pieces. Now, speaking of which... we're all devastated here on Loose Women because somebody who's doing their bit for marriage is Paddy on camera number 4. He's just got engaged, so we're all very pleased for you, Paddy. Where is he? Good luck. It's all down to you. And nations counting on him. And women here are devastated. Now, don't forget, you can bring your own thoughts on this topic and many others by creating your own profile and becoming friends with the Loose Women community on our website, itv.com/loosewomen. Right, we've just got time for Sherry to dig out her jumpsuit, as after the break we'll be celebrating the return of the pop group that we're really in the mood for, with sisters Bernie and Linda Nolan. But first, take a look at who's on tomorrow's Loose Women Friday finale.